Dr. Yang is and with me, yeah, and we'll attend the meeting together.
Leon, would you start the recording?
Done already.
Can you see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So we can start.
Yes, I think we can start. I can see the number of audiences is growing very fast. Okay. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon from Nairobi. My name is Lei Guo, and I'm sitting here at UN-Habitat's global headquarters in Nairobi, Kenya. Good afternoon to participants in Africa and Europe. Good morning to participants in North America and Latin America. Good evening to friends and colleagues in Asia. Welcome to UN-Habitat's Brownbag session, How Artificial Intelligence and Big Data are Playing a Critical Role in Combating COVID-19. Today, we're very fortunate to have 6 speakers from different parts of the world, from UN-Habitat, Georgia Tech, MIT, and WeBank in Shenzhen. Let me introduce the speakers one by one, but not in the sequence as they speak, as later on we would welcome speakers from Asia to start first due to the time differences, and then speakers from North America would speak later. And so today we're more than honored to have Professor Yana Howard. She's the School Chair of Interactive Computing, Georgia Tech. Professor Alex Pentland, Professor of Media Arts and Sciences. He's also a Director of MIT Media Lab Entrepreneurship Program. Mr. Marco Camilla was the Chief of Urban Finance and Economy previously at UN-Habitat. Now he is a Senior Economist at the newly launched Innovation section of UN-Habitat. Professor Yang Xiang, he's the Chief Artificial Intelligence Officer of WeBank. Dr. Haishan Wu, he's the Vice General Manager of AI Department at WeBank. And Victor Zeng, he's a Senior AI Researcher. And also, we introduce our IT support, Leon. He sits in Nairobi together with me and Marco. Each speaker would speak around 10 to 15 minutes, and we leave a small window for a Q&A. If you have a question for a specific speaker, please write down your question in the Q&A section, and I will pick up 1 or 2 questions for each speaker to answer. If anyone wants to speak, please raise your hand, but we encourage audiences to use the Q&A text box. We will be recording today's session for educational purposes, and everyone who participates will get a link which can be shared, and I encourage you to share with others. We hope to keep everyone engaged with UN-Habitat's latest program activities and innovative ideas. Okay, so now we give the floor to first speaker, Mr. Marco Camilla. Marco?
Thank you, Lei. Can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes, I can.
Yes. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Wherever you are, it's a pleasure to open this virtual conference. So my name is Marco Camilla from the Knowledge and Innovation branch of UN-Habitat. We are based in global headquarters in Nairobi, Kenya. Let's start. Today, now we've been through more than 100 days since the pandemic started. Something that summarizes the current situation is uncertainty. We don't know how long COVID-19 will last, if treatment or a vaccine will be developed soon, or if a recession or a global depression is waiting ahead. But we know that this is a crisis of vulnerabilities. COVID-19 disproportionately attacks vulnerable population, spreading in informal settlements, attacking poor neighborhoods, segregated communities, and overcrowded population. So from UN-Habitat, we consider that to find and contain the pandemic, so we have to reduce spatial inequalities, integrate markets with communities and central and local governments, and expand multilateral action. So what we need is a new social contract that combines and integrates with the aim of prosperity, the states, the community, and the markets. COVID-19 is seriously impacting the Agenda 2030 of the United Nations. This is the Sustainable Development Goals. The 17 Sustainable Development Goals are threatened, and what humanity and member states has achieved can fall apart. This week, the UN Development Program, UNDP, released his report on the Human Development Index. This report includes a simulation for this year 2020, showing that progress achieved too far in the Human Development Index can be drastically reduced in an equivalent of the last 6 years. And so the last 6 years of progress can be just wiped out this year. The report also shows that those without access to internet will suffer the most. No wonder this is due to a variety of reasons that goes from possibility to telework, to access to education, and access to opportunities. So closing the internet gap can reduce the decrease on Human Development Index. At the United Nations levels, the system has prepared a socio-economic response to COVID-19, and this includes the repurposing the funds and strengthening the response at country level with the resident coordinators and the different stakeholders in the UN system working with the counterparts. The UN also has innovation activities to facilitate coordination and exchanges of policy intervention acknowledged, such as the one shown in the slide, with different platforms to collaborate. The UN system is provided support in different areas. In the area of data, WHO has developed COVID-19 information dashboards. UNAIDS is also in partnership with different think tanks, is launching online coronavirus innovation map, and then other UN agencies, including UN-Habitat, that is working on City IQ, with city data and analytics with ESRI, so I will show this later on. The UN system is also developing applications. UNDP, WHO, UNICEF, and all other agencies are all working in different applications. We are also working on frontier technologies, scaling up different technologies to fight COVID-19. UN-Habitat has also recently prepared a policy and program framework to fight COVID-19. So this and UN-Habitat has also designed an open data website to receive information from cities and support humanitarian activities. There are two UN-Habitat contributions that I want to highlight. The first is the recent publication of the SARS book, Integrating Health in Urban Planning, prepared by UN-Habitat and the World Health Organization. So this is of great importance as the spreading of COVID-19 is explained to a large extent to poor urban planning in cities. So this publication combines short-term action with long-term plans to protect cities. And the main advice for planning and health are are explained in 4 dimensions on basic planning and legislative standards. Dimension 2, that is in improving on planning codes. Dimension 3, improving and with healthy special frameworks. And number 4, on urban and territorial process. Another second contribution that just was launched yesterday is the web platform City Readiness and Responsiveness for Coronavirus. So this platform, done in collaboration with CityIQ, combines and integrates data and measures the readiness, that is the strength to contain COVID-19, and the responsiveness, that is the capacity of the city to act against the emergency. So I invite you, all of you, to visit UN-Habitat web pages to access our tool, databases, and guidebooks. Finally, so I want to describe some of the things that we need to do. And today, with this renowned scientists, so we will learn more about answers to this. Number one is that we need to predict the spreading of COVID-19 and the direction and containment of this virus. So in the process, we need to have data that allows local governments to make decisions on housing, slums, and even on homelessness. That is an area that we have ignored for a long time. But number two, we also need data and tools to improve service delivery. And this includes working in informal settlements with national economic measures, providing access to financing, expanding the fiscal capacity of the local governments, and also considering to provide community grants and communal cash transfers. So all these are very difficult tasks, but science and technology can help us to navigate and overcome this global pandemic. So I just want to say that we are all in this together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marco. We got one question for you from Katia. She was saying, Marco, kindly enlighten us on the frontier technologies UN-Habitat applies to address COVID-19 situation in cities.
Yes. This is something that UN-Habitat is doing with different agencies, and one of the recent development is a tool to identify in informal settlements access to wash centers and access to different services. And we are doing this in Kenya, and we are hoping to very soon to scale up this in other countries and cities in Africa and beyond.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to the second speaker, Professor Yang Xiang. Professor Yang Xiang has been a friend of UN-Habitat since early this year. He has participated in the 10th UN-Habitat World Urban Forum in February. I'm sorry?
Yeah, please go.
Yeah. By the time of WOF 10 in February in Abu Dhabi, China was still the only heavily affected area by COVID-19 at the time. And I remember we hosted 17,000 people from around the world for WOF 10. And it was quite difficult for Chinese scholars to travel around for global events in February. But now the situation has changed. The epidemic has became a pandemic a few months ago, and on the contrary, China has cleared out the situation, and the society has been back to normal from many aspects, and we would love to hear from experts and specialists from China to tell us what is the latest development and what China has done right and wrong to help us better understand how we can cope with this virus. Professor Yang, you can have the floor now.
Thank you, Lei. So let me share the slides. Okay. All right, that's good. Okay. Hello, everyone. It's a great pleasure to meet you here virtually. And thank you, Lei, for putting together this great program. As we know, COVID-19 is a big shock to everybody. And as a result, many businesses are moving online. And it turns out that those who are well prepared ahead for online services and economy are better in coping with this very disastrous event. And so here, let me share some of my experience here working with the first internet bank in China and how we are conducting our business online. So first of all, to give you a background of this WeBank, WeBank has been in existence for 5 years. In the past 5 years, it has been created with a vision to connect and empower everybody with fintech services online on the internet. So as a result, it only exists on people's mobile phone and the internet and doesn't have a physical branch. And so it's driven by technology, especially AI and internet. So as of last year, we have certain things to show our innovation, the results. So for example, we were ranked #1 globally in the number of patents generated among all banks, and this includes all the banks in the world. So how we are able to achieve this, let me give you some ideas in terms of numbers. So first of all, the majority of staff in the bank are technical people, and the bank opens 7 hours, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and the time to launch a product is considered very fast, even in the internet standard. As of now, it's serving 200 million customers, mainly in China, and over 900,000 small and medium businesses. Okay, so how it's able to achieve this, in a large part, it's due to our investment in artificial intelligence. So we have 3 keywords here: inclusive, privacy, and intelligent. So to break down the technology, we can see we have mainly 2 parts. One is the modeling part. We can use AI models to capture from back office to the front office. And also we have robotic services in almost every stage of the business. Okay, so this is the key success secret. So here's a schematic view of the bank online. On the left-hand side, you see all the services from the front office, which is powered by AI robot. And that includes services that range from speech recognition, voice-powered customer service, to fraud detection, to various automation. And in the back office, we have big data and AI-empowered credit risk modeling, personalized price, user outlook forecasting, as well as investment analysis. Okay, so a deeper look into the AI robot and the front office end. So we can see that the robot is able to do a lot of things that human service people used to do, including face recognition and detection services to see whether the person in front of you is a live person or a fake one, to scan and analyze and digitize all the documents that are on paper, and to verify speakers based on their voice and fingerprint based on the voice frequencies. Now, based on these basic AI artificial intelligence services, we are able to build intelligent customer service, including front-end customer service conversation systems, as well as quality analysis system to monitor the quality of conversation, sentiment of the customer, to see if the customer is frustrated, is happy, is angry, and so on. So here are some schematics, right? So through the flow chart on the left, we can achieve a number of things like having a conversation with people, and in the process, we can detect multiple threads of the conversation. So people talk about one thing, another thing, and then one thing again in this not necessarily, in a very logical manner, and yet our system can decipher that. And so as a result, about 97% of all the messages are answered by robots, and still there are 3% by humans. These are used to train the robots as time continues, so it's a sustainable manner. And also human services are reserved for more difficult and novel questions. So these are some of the things. And also in terms of intelligent customer service, now here are some in Chinese. So just from the surface, you can see that it offers a wide range of services, and from the FAQ on the left all the way to individual customer question answering on the right. And also, as I mentioned before, there's quality analysis, and this can be done online. So as a customer, a system is monitoring whether the customer is served to his or her satisfaction, and the system can automatically and give tips to the service person, right? So similarly, we have a range of services for small and micro businesses, and this is particularly important in this COVID-19 period because many businesses are stopped, and as a result, they want to delay their loan payment, want to borrow more money to carry on. And so in order to facilitate this and to do it in a social distancing manner, we invented a helmet, which looks like this in the middle. The helmet can be express mailed to any business sending in a online application. And so it has a online voice recognition and image capturing facility to allow the person to scan through all the application documents and to take a look at the inventory of the small business and storefront in order to ensure that the business is a legit one, as well as one that's responsible and can take the loan. And this can greatly enhance the ability of our service to give out microloans to these businesses. So as a result, even in COVID-19 period, the business carries on very well and even increased. Now, so in order to find new customers and new services to offer to them, we also have a system to launch the advertisement. And this advertisement makes use of a technology which I will mention in a moment called federated learning to ensure that all privacy of the people, even those people viewing the advertisement, people providing the advertisement and media people, they can all protect their privacy. So the data are kept in secret. Okay. Now, so this is based on a technology known as recommendation systems. Now, so in a while after my talk, Haishan and Zhenghui will give further detailed talks on how satellite and alternative data technology can be used for investment. And this is also a part of our technology matrix. Now, the second part, which corresponds to the back office of an online bank, is AI modeling. As I mentioned, in the back, there's a lot of analysis going on whether a loan application is satisfies our risk requirement and make a lot of financial forecasting. And all these require a lot of big data to be part of our services. And these big data usually can be distributed in multiple places. So let me just quickly go through to see this part. So here I use a cartoon image to illustrate our requirement for privacy. You can see a little sheep in the middle of a picture. On the left-hand side, the traditional way of feeding the sheep is to buy the grass and feed the grass to the sheep in a central location. And this corresponds to when we want to build an AI model, we borrow or buy all these data and gather them in one central place. But this is a very backward method, which have a high risk of revealing and leaking users' privacy. So instead, in the age of privacy-sensitive period, where people have legal system like GDPR and society demands privacy, we want to use another way, which is we want to keep the graphs where they are. We want to keep the data locally and ask the model to travel from place to place. And in this process, privacy is protected. So this is the principle of federated learning. So using federated learning, the platform which we call FATE, we have built up a number of business cases. For example, we can let a bank to work with a data provider, which may be a invoice data providing company. By joining their data in a privacy-sensitive way, the data dimensions can be expanded, the model can be enriched, and yet privacy is protected. In another case, the data provider is a media company, and this is also a real case in which preserving manner. So this used to be something that cannot be done because the company that provides data is a social media company, is very, very conscious about its privacy. And using this federated learning, they are able to collaborate and find out a lot of fraud cases that they cannot find before. So similar cases are used for financial regulatory authority for finding out money laundering situations and capture more backups that way. And in another case, we work with Hong Kong Monetary Authority, and in fact, in their recent documents, they recommend the use of federated learning in a number of their services. And finally, federated learning is playing a key role in moving the physical economy, the offline economy. And here is a picture of an inventory where there are lots of boxes. So as we know, the online services, online shopping relies on express mail of these physical entities. And so inventory control and monitoring becomes important. And here we use computer vision and federated learning to let these repositories to learn from each other and gain in their ability. So finally, we have built a system to make the standard available to everybody globally. So we are close to completing a first international standard on federated learning and user privacy. And also we made the platform available on the Linux Foundation for open source. And so finally, the last example is we have engaged in an activity research to build a green card system, federated health code for people to check whether they have been in contact with a COVID-19 patient. Because when we move around physically, we don't know whether we come close to such a patient. But the mobile phone can record some of our traces, our physical traces. And by comparing the mobile phone data, we can find such intersection, such encounter. But this has the risk of revealing people's privacy. And so by using federated learning, we solve the privacy problem. So only the people who are infected will, or who came to close contact will know themselves whether they have come to close contact, and nobody else will know this situation. So this will become the next generation health code system. So thank you. Finally, we believe this technology together with online artificial intelligence will make inclusive services available, and so we can better build a better economy even during this COVID-19 period.
Thank you very much, Professor Yang. We have two questions for you from the audience. The first one is, I know that your company serves a lot of SMEs for them to get micro to medium size loan online immediately off the WeChat platform. And I assume your company also does massive financial forecasting. And what is the recent and most interesting findings out of the financial forecasting? Does it show some certain patterns of economy activities during and post COVID?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question. In fact, we also had the same question. We are very curious what we can learn from these lendings. In fact, it turns out that we can get such information from alternative data, because the traditional financial data come in very low frequency and requires heavy human involvement. By using alternative data, we are able to discover, for example, how the economy recovers, and we can discover in more detail by region, by the type of business
Professor
Hello?
Yang, I can't hear you anymore.
Okay. Okay, now can you hear me, please?
Yes, you're back online.
Okay. Okay, yes. So, to answer the question, so we can discover a lot of very interesting economic activities through alternative data, such as satellite data and mobile data. And Haishan and Zhenghui will give a more detailed report on this.
Okay, thank you very much. We look forward to that. And the second question for you is, can you talk about some COVID-19 specific steps that WeBank has taken?
Yes. As every other business, in the beginning phase, we all work from home, and especially when we engage in meeting activity, team activities, we exploit online services. So we are all familiar with Zoom. This is the system that people often use. WebEx. But in China, people are familiar with, for example, Tencent systems. Online meetings are efficient, to the point, very focused, and we can have more intimate personal collaboration. So a team can work more in a very tightly closed collaborative manner. So there's a silver lining in this as well.
Thank you very much. Okay, now next, let's move to the third speaker, Dr. Haishan Wu. Dr. Wu is the Vice General Manager of AI Department at WeBank, and he's also a very young upcoming technologist who was awarded MIT 35 by 35. And you can find his detailed bio in the flyer we sent out. Dr. Wu is going to talk about the China Economic Recovery Index and how WeBank used the satellite images and other alternative data in their daily practices.
Great. Can you see my screen of the slide?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm Haishan from WeBank in Professor Yang's team. So basically, I'm going to share how we use AI and alternate data to gauge the economic activity and the impact of COVID-19 in China, especially in China. As Professor Yang said, our team focused on how to use AI and alternate data to analyze and build and compile some indexes of China to use for financial applications or financial services in China. So in our team, actually, I would like to share three parts of our research. One is we composed a China Economic Recovery Index by analyzing the aggregate geolocation data from smartphones. And secondly, we created an online economic index for several sectors like online remote working, online education, online gaming, and online streaming or online entertainment industry by analyzing the social media data online. And thirdly, we built a satellite manufacturing index by many massive satellite imagery data to gauge the manufacturing activity of steel sector. So basically, our SMI shows there's a very obvious W shape of economic recovery, which I think could be used as a reference for other countries. So basically, the first part is how we use geolocation data to measure the economic recovery during the coronavirus in China. So basically, we first use machine learning algorithm, try to analyze the aggregate geolocation data from a smartphone, try to identify where the people live and work. And then by aggregate the data, the mobility data together, we can see we build an index called the China Economic Recovery Index. So basically, this index shows the overall level of consumption or working or manufacturing of the whole economic system. So as you can see, the red color curve is the China economic recovery of this year during the coronavirus. And actually, this the blue color of the curve shows the China economic recovery actually, of last year. So you can see basically because of the coronavirus, China's the overall economic recovery index is just a slide down sharply from the beginning of from the end of January to almost the end and to the middle of the February, and then it grew slowly from the middle of February in 2020. And you can see there's ups and downs of the curve because generally during the weekend or the holidays, people they stay at home much more than the weekdays. So our results show that we just build a daily updated index, the CRR, for China. So basically, I can see our CRI as of April 20th this year, it has already shows that 90% of the economy has been recovered has recovered in China. So this is the overall index of China, and I would like to show the result of several typical cities. And actually, these three curves shows the China economic recovery of three typical cities. One is the red color, as you can see, is Wuhan, which is the epicenter of the coronavirus. So because of the lockdown of the city, you can see from end of January to almost to the end of March, you can see the index is just very flat because of the lockdown and the very strict quarantine procedure in China. And the second city is Beijing. You can see because Beijing also have a lot of confirmed cases. So the government also have very strict quarantine measurement to control the spread of the coronavirus. So you can see it grows, but it grows quickly than faster than Wuhan, but it's slower than another city with Shenzhen. We are now working because Shenzhen is much better than compared with other cities. You can see it recovered very fast compared with Beijing and Wuhan. So actually, at the end of April this year, almost 98% of the economy of Shenzhen has been recovered. So this is a spatial distribution of economic recovery of different provinces in China. As you can see, the coastal cities in China, they recovered pretty well than inland cities. And if you see the data of each city, you can see this is like the top 10 cities with very higher the CRI. And we also showed, and you can see basically most of the cities like Foshan, Suzhou, they're coastal cities in China, like in Jiangsu, Zhejiang, or Guangzhou. So, but for the last cities, 10 cities with CRI, we can see, the first one is Wuhan, as you can see, because it is the epicenter of the coronavirus. And for the other two cities, Harbin and Beijing, because the government has a very strict quarantine measurement of these two cities to control the spread of coronavirus. So it has it recovered slower than other cities. So we also performed other analysis, by trying to correlate the GDP per capita of each city with a recovery index. Try to see whether you can see, what's the relationship between, whether a richer city can recover quicker than other cities. And to our surprise, we see that the correlation between GDP per capita with the CRI we have built is the I-square could be it's higher than 50%. That means they correlate with each other very well. This is the result of last year, and during this year because of the coronavirus, so you can see the overall correlation is lower than last year. The R-square is still higher than 30%. And there are two other lines. One is Wuhan here, and the other one is Harbin here. Basically, that means excluding Harbin and Wuhan. Basically, that means the richer one city is, the quicker it could be recovered from the coronavirus. That means I think maybe it could be also used as a case for an analysis for other countries. That means I think the government should pay more attention to the poor areas or poor cities during the coronavirus. And the second part of our research, we build an index called a manufacturing index from analyzing the satellite imagery data to see how the steel manufacturing sector recover from the coronavirus. So basically, this is our analysis. We use a deep learning algorithm try to analyze the data from the satellite called Sentinel-5. We use a very specific spectral channel, which is called the shortwave infrared channel. This is because for the steel manufacturing factors, some equipments, they could emit very higher, the temperature could be extremely higher, so they could emit a shortwave infrared light wave. That means we can use the satellite try to capture that kind of light to analyze, and to detect and to analyze the extremely hot area, try to quantify the activity of steel manufacturing. So basically, as you can see, this red color here shows the extremely hot area of the steel manufacturing factors in China. So by using AI algorithm to analyze those satellite imagery data, we built an index called the Satellite Manufacturing Index to gauge the steel manufacturing activity in China. So in order to validate our results, we correlate our results, our SMI, with the two other official macroeconomic indexes. One is we call the industrial added value in China. You can see they correlate with each other pretty well. And meanwhile, we also correlate our results with another macro index called the PMI, and it also shows strong correlation actually. So by this way, we build a SMI to measure the steel sector recovery. So very interesting. We found that as you can see, because of the coronavirus, the total steel manufacturer activities just slide down very sharply from 80% to almost 30%. However, it recovered pretty quickly, as you can see from the second week of February this year. It already recovered from 30% to almost 80%, and later it also grows to 90%. However, due to the spread of coronavirus in other countries, that means that the demand from the exported demand from other countries is weaker than before. So that as you can see, it just went down again because of the weak export demand. And later our results show that during the May of this year, the SMI just going up again. This is because the China government has used different kind of financial policies, try to help those different companies, especially small and medium companies, try to recover the economy. That means the whole economy is recover again from the coronavirus. So it shows a very interesting W-shape recovery pattern. We also try to analyze the satellite imagery data, try to gauge the activity of other different companies. One is the Baoshan Steel company, which is very big, one of the biggest steel manufacturing companies in China. And our data shows that almost higher than 50% of the activity has been recovered from 10th February of this year. And another case we analyzed is Shanghai's Tesla factory, which is one of the largest Tesla factory in the world. So basically, we analyzed detect and count the number of cars in the parking lots where the employees of Tesla they park their cars. So by counting the number of cars using AI algorithm, we found that actually at the beginning of February, like 10th of February of 2020, almost all of their economic activity has been recovered. Another interesting case is about the tourism industry. We detect and count the number because of Shanghai Disney land resort, and we found that it's almost empty. And it means the whole tourism industry was hit hard in China. So, however, I think as you can see, we can use AI to analyze the satellite imagery data and compile different indexes tied to gauge the overall economic system. However, as our team has about more than 66 years of analyzing satellite imagery data, so this is the lesson we have learned from how to use a scientific way to analyzing and the satellite imagery data for economic research. Otherwise, you may get very wrong results. The first one, we think that you have to cross-validate analysis of your results of your data with official released data or survey data like PMI data or other like GDP data or something. And the second lesson we learn is that you have to have a very good knowledge of the area you are going to analyze, especially if you have never been there. So you have to know very well whether this is a parking lot for employers or whether it's a parking lot for just consumers. You have to know very clearly of the area you're going to analyze. And the third one is you have to use a very scientific and rigorous way to overcome the limitations of satellite data. Like the satellite data could have different capture angles, could have different satellite could have different visiting time, and the cloud and shadows may also affect the quality of the satellite imagery data. So the fourth one is if you have a team to analyze the satellite imagery data, you have at least one satellite expert in your team, and you know very well how the data was generated and analyzed. So because satellite data, you have to have a lot of expert knowledge to analyze the data. And the last one is the correlation from the data doesn't mean the causality. So if you want to draw a very important conclusion from your findings, you have to be very careful about this. So these are our lessons about how to analyze the satellite imagery data. And the last one is in order to track the online business in China, we also use NLP algorithm to mine the social media data during coronavirus. And we build an index to measure such the online business trend. And we use our index to try to measure the 4 different kind of online business, which is very interesting. One is remote working. As you can see now, we use WebEx, we use Zoom for online meeting, online working. And our index shows the remote working in the sector during the coronavirus in China just grows more than 500%. And the other one is remote education. It also goes up for almost 200%. And online gaming and online video, because people need to spend more time on gaming, entertainment, and video, it also grows pretty higher. And however, we also build similar indexes to measure the activity of other sectors. One is social networker, and the other one is e-commerce. And for social network, because people may spend more time with their friends or my family by use social network, applications. So it grows like 50%. However, there's no obvious growth of e-commerce during the coronavirus of e-commerce sector. This is because as you can see, the express delivery service in China during the coronavirus is going down a little bit. This is because the government has already just conducted a very strict quarantine measurement, and that means you have to very limited resources for express delivery service in China. And the last one I would like to share is when will the economy is going to be recovered or fully recovered? Is there any way that we can try to forecast the future trend? So basically, as you can see, we build several forecasting models. The one is, we build a forecasting model, a linear forecasting model from our China economic recovery index, and we found that about in Actually, this is our results from at April actually. At that time, we found that at the end of May, the overall economy of China is going to be recovered, which is match what we have done in China actually. The other one we use our social media data or index to try to predict what's going to happen and when will the social media index is going to be back to normal. And our results show that in China, as you can see, the forecasting result shows at the end of March at that time, it's going to be very good. But however, this is because before the coronavirus spread globally. So as you can see, when the coronavirus spread globally, you can see the curve is flattened. And our latest results by analyzing the latest social index data, we show that at the end of July, the overall economy of the world is going to be back to normal. So this is our findings from our research. If you want to know more about our research, we have a report with the UNDP about how we use such data to help our government and our company try to provide different financial service to help the small and medium companies in China to recover from the coronavirus. Thank you.
Thank you, Haishan. Before I enter Q&A, I would like to encourage all the speakers to try to answer questions in the chat boxes, because due to the time strain, we can't pick every one of the questions from the audience. But while Victor is going to speak, you and Professor Yang and also Marco can try to answer the questions in the chat boxes. Out of the many questions raised in the chat area, I picked the one from Serene Zaid, if I pronounced it correctly. Thank you, Haishan, for your presentation. What is your view about usage of night light imagery for capturing macro impact of COVID? Haishan, this question is for you.
Sorry, can you say it again, please? I lost my connection.
Yes, the question was, what's your view about the usage of night light imagery for capturing macro impact of COVID?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Actually, for our analysis, we also analyze the night light imagery data for analysis. But we found that that is a very good way to analyze the economic recovery. But I can recommend you one paper from IMF, and they show that for the net light data, different countries maybe have very different patterns. For example, in the U.S., maybe the correlation between net light intensity with economic recovery is not that good. But for other countries, maybe for developing countries, the correlation could be very higher. And for other countries, for energy preserving countries, such as in Japan, maybe the correlation is negative. So that means for different countries, you have to apply different kind of algorithm, or the correlation is linear or non-linear. So you have to be very careful about when you analyze the data from the net light data.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I can see questions from my colleague Kenya and my colleague Saiful. He was asking, has WeBank done any analysis on the impact of COVID-19 towards the environment? For example, air quality, CO2 emissions, energy consumption, prediction on the increase plastic and medical waste. Based on my knowledge of the speaker, I believe the next speaker would address this question.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a very good question. I think Victor then is going to share more about how we use different kind of data, especially alternative data, try to measure the environmental, social, and governance of companies in China. Thank you.
Thank you, and please try to answer the questions in the chat area. Victor, you may have the floor.
Yeah, I'm in, and I and Dr. Wu just mentioned, and we will talk how we did and the relevant research from the sustainable and the green environmental perspective, and I will go deeper later.
Yes, could you share your screen?
Maybe you have gave you have to you have to transfer the role to me.
Okay, Victor, you have the role.
Could you see my screen?
Not yet. Yes, now we can see it.
Okay, I tried to.
Expand.
Can you see the full screen or still maybe the speaker? Could you see the full screen?
We are not seeing the full screen. Can you present your slide into the presentation mode?
Okay. Okay, it works, right? Okay, so Professor Yang and Dr. Wu presenter from a different perspective to show our muscle in AI, and I will try to share what we have and did in ESG investment and sustainable finance, and how we use and AI and alternative data to do the things. So first, we have to ask a question, and how serious is the climate change? On the one hand, the topic was reported and more seriously and urgently. On the other hand, and the people, just put an alarm on the shelf. So, say and the cipher just ask a question, and we didn't do relevant research and by ourselves, but we have a very interesting and funding. This is by Central and 5 satellites. Yeah, you can see that about NO2 and concentration comparison. The left side, you can see that in how China and a change from January and to February, and the right side shows and how
Excuse
Italy.
me? Sorry
Okay.
for the interruption. We are not seeing the slides changes. We are still looking at the first page of the slide.
Okay, let me check. You can see from the.
Not on my end.
Okay, maybe I try again. Yeah, could you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, as I just mentioned, we can see the changes of NO2 concentration comparison between China and Italy, and how the country suffer from the outbreak. It's very obviously that, and how the different regions change and from the satellite images. And this also shows and how the United States changes from March in 2019 and March in 2020. So what I would like to see and from this and phenomenon, that is about, and someone maybe have a research perspective is in how the world will how the climate change from the perspective of COVID-19. So how we have could and get the conclusion of the rules that's behind the climate change. So, and we know that the 2018 Nobel Prize went to two people. The first one is Paul Roman. The second one is William Nordhaus. We know that Paul Roman, and because of his contribution to the key role of technology and the knowledge, and William Nordhaus, he because he integrates climate change into long-run macroeconomic analysis, describe the catastrophic price both by and people's ignorance and inaction. And he has a new book. It was called Climate Casino. I guess some of the audience have and watched and before. It it actually answer one of the most fundamental and urgent question of our time. That is, and how to balance sustainable development and the economic growth. And this also is the starting point of our research. That is ESG investment. We know that ESG investment could lead the capital flow and also a good way to achieve sustainable development goals. ESG investment could be divided into three parts: environmental, social, and governance. It not only could reflect the sustainability of the company, but also could reflect how it could use the sustainable finance ability. So when you combine it with AI and alternative data, we could find that existing pain point of ESG in desk and analysis. The first is about the huge amount of unstructured data face current ESG analysis. We know that current ESG analysis is faced with large number of unstructured data in traditional task, charts, market information, and traditional industry research like currency and timelines. And most ESG data rely on voluntary disclosure by the enterprise. So we need structured data. The second is about the ESG data lag. Most data source for ESG ranking rely on disclosure financial statements or CSR report, but these are annually or maybe semi-annually reported and updated. So many ESG indicators are only updated once a year, making it difficult to provide the most timely insights of managing risk and improving returns. So we need real-time data prior to financial reports and announcements to help us to find the ESG risk. The third thing is about the limited data. Most of the ESG data coverage period is just about 10 years, and the backtracking time is limited. The single data type leads to poor sustainability compared to small enterprise. Large enterprise often disclose more CSR or ESG data, so they have more innovate within one portfolio. So we need covering multiple fields and multiple time periods. The final one is that current ESG ranking lack of objectivity and accuracy. Many data such as manufacturing production and corporate governance are derived from offline personnel research and subjective scores. Different data provider and the ranking agency assign different weights to ESG indicators. This and like objective and accuracy. So we need objective quantitative data. So how we can do that? We can do it in different phases, three different phases. The first one is about multi-source data fusion processing and AI analysis. This was, this was to solve the bottlenecks of data acquisition and processing. And take my, what we did in our motion team, we have over 10 years of data for over 100,000 affiliated company and 10 million data points and 250,000 public opinion data and 800 CSR reports. So it includes a lot of alternative data type, including satellite imagery, public opinion announcement data, environmental penalty, and the emission data, also location-based spatial temporal data, and sensor data. And the second industry chain. And this help us to solve, the data acquisition and the processing problem. And this is a case, and as an example, just an ask. We do the satellite data identification about the land use. This is a case about the Shanghai Baoshan. We have identified, similar case for over 1,000 listed companies. From this, we could combine this data with the pollution data. So we could know that and how, the company or maybe the factory will impact the surrounding environmental. This is another case. We know that, and this case that shows that a case about Shanxi Gaoyi Steel Company. And from the satellite imagery, we can know that the change of the training emission of a listed company and assess the environmental impact of production. And we know that it was heavily suffer from the pollution. And in the end, the company was fined 4.13 million yuan by Yucheng Environmental Protection Bureau in 2008 for its emission. And this could help us to identify the ESG risk before the launching of CSR or maybe financial reports. And this is a case about knowledge graph. We built a financial knowledge graph based on equity relationship, supply chain, and value chain. Discover the relations using network learning technicals and explore the transition of ESG risk through relationship. So we could know that how the ESG risk transition from different kinds of relationship. Yeah, the second phase is about the data-driven ESG ranking. It was based on industry standards and dynamic adjustment, and we have refer to international standards, including like UNPRI, SASB, UNEPFI, a number of international standards. We also have checked, the regulatory policy in China and around the world. And also we have check from what kind of data we have to form our data foundation. And the final one is about we have a negative list to check that whether the A share or maybe listed company, have some negative issues. The final phase is about the ESG strategy. When we get the ESG ranking, how we use the ESG ranking, how we can form our ESG strategy. That is risk signal and factor integration. As the first stage is just for the ESG ranking. We build the ESG rankings based on the company. It could help us to identify the issues or parties with ESG risk. The second is about we remove the targets with ESG risk. And the second stage is about ESG index. We build portfolio of such listed company based on ESG rankings and screen and check ESG topic portfolios. The final is about the ESG factors. We flashable use the ESG indicator as risk control indicator and investment factor. And this stage we have to conduct attributional analysis and build factory strategy. So how ESG strategy perform? And we have combined our team have combined the ESG leader index with the CSI 300, and it performs well. It performs better than the CSI 300 between 2014 and 2019, which means that we use the ESG strategy could fund the ESG risk and have a better performance. So that's just a short introduction about our team. Yeah, our team is WeBank AI Motion team, and we have a number of patents, and we have again a number of rewards as for AI ESG. Yeah, and thank you very much, and I'm great if you have any question. Yeah. So, Lego, I have done my part, and I move into your part.
And my colleague Tanya is asking if you can share the methodology for ESG. As we're running a bit behind the time, I suggest that I could link you up and you can share after the webinar. Next, let's move on to Professor Ayana Howard's speech. Professor Ayana Howard is from Georgia Tech. She's the school chair for interactive computing, Georgia Institute of Technology. She is a gifted robotic researcher, teacher, mentor, and community leader who has inspired and encouraged countless students in engineering and science. Let's give the floor to Professor Howard.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
So what I'm going to talk about in my 15 minutes is this whole ecosystem of AI robotics and the things that we are thinking about with respect to ethics, social impact, and issues such as bias and access. So what I would say is I've been doing robotics now for over 20 years as a practicing roboticist. And before we came to this situation, a lot of individuals still express some apprehension, some, I would say, discomfort with robots and AI. So using it, companies would adopt, we had users, but most people had some apprehension. What we've now seen is this rapid adoption and acceptance of robots, primarily because of the scenario we are in. Robots have always been seen as the tools for anything that was quote unquote dirty, dangerous, and dull. And we are now in a situation where dangerous has become the norm. And so we see robots for cleaning places. We see drones that are working on delivery in remote areas to go from major cities to places that have are fairly isolated. We see artificial intelligence for things like contact tracing to really enhance and try to model these phenomena, and even things like chatbots when you need to call up a government for service and things like that. And we're seeing an increased adoption. So one of my colleagues, Robin Murphy, who runs the Center for Robot Assisted Search and Rescue, did a full summary of the robots and systems that have been deployed, and this data, she continuously updates it. And one of the things is that this adoption is not isolated in terms of one country, one city, one region. It's actually being used across different domains and different areas, different verticals, everything from clinical care in the hospitals, working directly with patients, all the way to public safety and ensuring that there's some type of enforcement. We've seen, for example, drones being used to monitor that areas have social distancing, as well as robots that are coming into clinics and hospitals that are trying to clean up so that you don't have direct contact between humans and possibly someone who's been diagnosed. And so these are, I would say, the good things and the positive things. And as a roboticist, I'm excited because all of the technologies we've been working on all of this time are now kind of being adopted, and we are being put to the test of, does it actually work with diverse users? Does it work in different areas? And most of us are rising to the challenge. Government is supporting, UN is supporting to really ensure that robots are used for good in these situations. But the thing that I worry about is we're in the now, and a lot of times when we think about the now, we are willing to forgo some of our rights, some of our civil liberties, some of the things that we tend to think about. And so what that means is that as we adopt, we as users, we as public, we in our organizations have to really think about what the next is. So we use AI, for example, for contact tracing. So what happens in a year or in a year and a half when that function may not be needed anymore? How do we pull back the rein? How do we then get back our data and think about things such as privacy now versus later? And so one of the things we are pushing is that as we develop and as we put these technologies and as agencies and organizations are adopting, that they really think about doing it right with respect to access and accessibility and privacy and eradicating biases, because it's going to be an issue if we don't do it now versus later. And one of the things is that now it's really easy to forget. It's really easy to just say, but we need this, we need it now, we need to adopt, and we'll, kind of not worry about all these other things. Because the fact is that people are human, people are people. And the thing is that as we spend less time with our, outside of our social network, what happens is we become less focused, we become more forgiving of the technology. And as a roboticist, these are the things that we worry about, because we have this aspect, at least in the US, we have job losses, and those jobs are being replaced by automation. And so what happens when we don't really need the automation? Well, automation now has that. And so I think as a public, as a citizen of whatever region, it's basically demanding that these technologies are adopted and put in correctly. We need them, but there's still this pause that we have to have as consumers to really think about that. And it's become even more apparent, especially as we see that there's been a lot of unequal kind of disparate impact on a lot of communities, especially underrepresented rural communities in terms of the pandemic. We worry that automation will be another replacement in terms of widening the gap. And so we need to do it now. And now is the time, because people are willing to listen, government's willing to listen, agencies are willing to listen. And so kind of action items, both for you, either as a consumer or in a company or at an agency or a government facility, is really being mindful of the technologies that are being adopted. So as technologists, we develop, we design, we deploy, but as users, you're the ones that are adopting it. And so being mindful that as you're adopting, push back on the developers, push back on the technologists to say, hey, have you looked at, does this work for other underserved communities? Does this work for cities versus rural? Does this work for just the US, or does it work for Nairobi? And really pushing back on developers and technologists, because we are listening and we just need to have that input. The other is that it's about demanding accountability of others, basically asking and saying, and what's next? What are the safe holds are you going to put in, or the safeguards that you're going to put in for afterwards? After we release our data and we forgive our privacy, are there safeguards so that we can basically take away our permission later on when it's no longer needed? And we personally have to reinvent ourselves. Automation robots, they are replacing some of our job functions. And so it's, in some cases, we also have to think about the new jobs that we want, because some of those jobs will not come back. They just won't. And so we ourselves also have to be mindful that we might have to adapt in some cases about the new jobs of the future, and being proactive, whether we're on the education side or we're on the side of being impacted, about what is it that I can do in the next so that I'm still comfortable and I have the rights of a job and I have good security in terms of livelihood and things like that. And I'm also especially concerned, not just in terms of underserved, but one of the conversations I don't hear a lot about is individuals with differing needs, individuals with disabilities. A lot of the things that you see in the world, and not just with respect to AI and robotics, but just in terms of policies, have not really highlighted the fact that there are also individuals that are being impacted that have disabilities and are being impacted greatly with respect to that. And I think about one example really quickly is, if you think about us wearing masks, individuals who lip read, you can't see the lips. And so right there, we've now disadvantaged an entire population with something that we think of as very simple. And so thinking about, there's a whole class of individuals where we are not thinking about them in this way and fashion. And so we need to do better with that as well. So just in conclusion, we are living in a time that no one could have imagined. And I'm excited as a roboticist. It's basically my entire career is come to the fruition of, oh my gosh, like all that technology we've been designing and developing for the last 20, 30 years, we are put to the test. And I'm excited about that. but I also realize that we as a community need to make sure that we do it right so that we don't come on to the other side and have to fix anything. Otherwise, we will have another crisis, which I don't think we need to if we think about it now versus later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Howard. I have not received specific questions, but thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wish we can have a longer, we can give each speaker a longer time for them to present. And I have to apologize to all the audiences that Professor Alex Pentland has dropped because we are 15 minutes later than we were scheduled. I assume he scheduled his meetings back to back. But don't worry, we are going to schedule a second series on this Frontier Technology Talk. We also invited healthcare professionals from Google and NHS, which they also had a scheduling conflict. Let's move these speakers to the series 2 of this workshop. Thank you very much, and especially my deep gratitude to all the panelists. Hope everyone works together to achieve a better, safer, healthier urban future. And we can end the webinar today. Thank you. Thank you all.